These are the 1.2b notes over symmetry. Our essential question for today, what is symmetry? So we have three types of symmetry: x-axis, y-axis, and origin symmetry. And there's a photo here to show you what each one of them is. So x-axis symmetry is when the x-axis, the one that goes horizontally, cuts the graph in half from top to bottom. So we can call that maybe a reflection, up, down, or if you like the phrase better, you can call it top, bottom. So I'm just going to pick a point on the top, call that 0, 2. And I'm going to show how it reflects across the x-axis, and it goes from the top to the bottom and lands here at 0, negative 2. Notice the only difference with that point is the y value has changed from positive to negative. So down here on our xy, we're just going to take the y value and make it into a negative. xy changes into x negative y. For our y-axis symmetry, the y-axis, the vertical one, will cut it down the center. We'll say that is a reflection from right to left. Or if you'd rather, side to side. So notice what you have on the right is exactly a mirror image of what you have on the left. You can even take a point. Let's grab this point right here, 2, 8. And if you reflect it over the y-axis, it lands right here at negative 2, 8. Notice how the x value changes from a positive to a negative. The x value would change to a negative, and the y value, the 8, stays the same. The last type of symmetry is something known as the origin symmetry. And the origin is actually a double reflection, so it's kind of a combination of the x-axis and the y-axis at the same time. So we can call it a double reflection. Or some people like to think about it as a diagonal reflection. So if you take a point, maybe this point up here, 210, and you not only flip it right, left, and up, down, but you actually do both. So imagine this dot going from up here, flipping it down, like we did at the x-axis, and then moving that point across to right here. So it kind of double reflects over the x-axis and over the y-axis. And it lands at the point negative 2, negative 10. So with your xy down here, we're going to change both of them. The x changes as well as the y changes. Okay, so these notes are going to be split up into two different pieces. One is just going to be examining graphs. And then on the back side at the very end, we're going to focus on these xy points. Let's get started with our graphs. Tell whether each graph is symmetric with respect to the x-axis, y-axis, or origin. So we're pretty much just trying to figure out which of these is happening. Is it the same on the right and the left? Is it the same top to bottom? Or is it the same diagonally? So for this first one, you can even check each one. X-axis, there's my x-axis. Does that graph look the same at the top as it does at the bottom? Well, no, my entire graph is at the top and I have nothing at the bottom. So that really doesn't work. What about my y-axis? If I draw a line down the middle, do I have the same thing on the right as I do on the left? Yes, that looks exactly the same on the right as it does on the left. So this would be y-axis symmetry. The second one, I noticed very quickly that this is diagonal shapes from each other. So this one I know is going to be origin. It's going from one corner of the graph to the opposite corner of the graph. The last one is going to be x-axis symmetry. The x-axis cuts it right down the center, and you have the same thing at the top as you do at the bottom. X-axis. All right, now it's your turn. You've got 3 other graphs on the back. See if you can tell which one each of this is. X-axis, Y-axis, or origin. Go ahead and take a moment. The first one is x-axis symmetry. The x-axis, you have the same thing at the top as you do at the bottom. Top versus bottom. That is x-axis. The second one is y-axis symmetry. You have the same thing on the right as you do on the left. Y-axis. This last one is your origin symmetry. You have the same thing diagonally here as you do in the opposite corner. So think about it traveling diagonally or down and over, up and over. So it's a right-left flip as well as a top-bottom flip. All right, for the next piece, we're actually going to draw the other half of the graph in the correct place so it has that certain type of symmetry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my x-axis here just so I can kind of see where my graph needs to be. And I need to think about this as going from the top to the bottom. See if you can draw the other half of your graph. Right, for your y-axis symmetry, straight down the middle here. So you're going to think about whatever you draw on the right, you're going to move it over to the left-hand side. And the origin, you're going to think about moving it diagonally. Okay, so for the first one, whatever goes at the top is going to move directly underneath it to the bottom. So this dot would travel to here. That dot would reflect to there. That one's 3 above the line. I'm going to go 3 below and 4 and just kind of continue with that same pattern. For the y-axis symmetry, whatever's on the right, you're going to move it over to the left. So you can even kind of follow that pattern right there. For the diagonal, instead of going up 1 and over 2 in that direction, you're going to go down 1 and over 2 the other direction. The diagonal one tends to be the one that gives people the most amount of trouble. So if necessary, you could just take a point here. That would be 2, 1. And we know that the origin is going to make both of them negative. So I need to graph the point -2, -1. And sometimes then that helps get people started in the right direction. Okay, the very last thing we're going to do is talk about our points. So for our symmetry points, remember that the x-axis, we're just going to change the y value into a negative or into the opposite sign. The y, we're going to change the x. And the origin, we are going to change both. So for this first one, we have a +6 and a +2. The x-axis, I'm going to change the y. 6, -2. Take a moment and see if you can do the y-axis and the origin. For the y-axis, you should have gotten -6, +2, changing the x value, and the origin, -6, -2, changing both. All right, for part B, you have a -3, 7. So one of these is already a negative. So when we say change the y, just change it to the opposite sign. Change the x, opposite sign. I'll give you a second. Your x-axis, you should have changed the y value, so keep the x the same and change the y. For your y-axis, you're going to change your x and keep the y the same. And then for your origin, you're going to change both of the signs. So -3, +7 turns into +3 and -7. Those are your symmetry notes. If you have any questions, feel free to send me an email or ask me when I see you in class. Great job today.